All right, I'm going to try it from my end. Let's see if we could get this thing to work. All right, this is the, fifth attempt now at trying to get this thing rolling, or fourth attempt. Anyway, a whole bunch of stuff to get into this week in the wonderful world of professional wrestling. And Mark Zuckerberg is absolutely to blame for everything going on right now, where the damn feed is not working as it should. Anyway, so much to get into, and I really want to wait for the brainless one to join in with this before we get too far, but there's a lot that's going on in professional wrestling. The CM Punk situation, update on possible future of Randy Orton. What's happening, Jessica? We've got, death of a WWE legend that happened this week. We have the official announcement of AEW Collision. That was kind of a big deal, and a shocking thing as far as the upfront presentations in New York City for Fox. More or less, WWE was not involved with that presentation, which I think is a really, really interesting thing at this moment, because there's a writer's strike going on in Hollywood, and a lot of the scripted primetime shows that are out there at this moment are in jeopardy of, not happening come fall season. So you've got this one entity, WWE, who you have that is a sure thing, and, they, for whatever reason, saying technical issues, brainless one. All right. I don't know what's going on as far as all this connectivity issue is between the brainless one and I, but definitely the fact that WWE was not listed on the upfronts and was not talked about was something a little strange. They talked in some way, shape, or form of how that's technically part of Fox Sports. And that's why it wasn't talked about, but, they didn't present them as part of the Friday lineup for Fox. Again, strange. You got a writer's strike going on, and you have a known entity that is actually, not going to strike. They do, bring some consistent ratings. They're not mega high ratings or what have you, but they do bring consistent ratings. So, what's going on, Eric? Gags? How are things? Hope all is well with you. Let's see if this will work. Adding the brainless one. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, that's so much better. I mean,
What's going on? I mean, outside of Zuckerberg doing his crap.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. This is incredible. I don't know. We're here. It's Friday. We're connected. Let's talk wrestling.
Yeah, where do you want to start? Do we want to start on the sad note? Do we want to start on the crazy note? Or do we want to start on other notes?
We can finish up what you were talking about, and then we could go to the unfortunate sad note.
Okay. But with the upfronts, with the current writer's strike in Hollywood, many of the shows that they have in prime time on all the major networks will not happen as of right now. WWE is not on strike. Their writers aren't on strike. unless you have nothing but reality television, you know, there's going to be a problem come the fall.
Right.
But during this upfront presentation Fox had, they did not mention WWE as being part of the Friday lineup, which in my view is strange.
Right.
There were those reports months ago talking about how, oh, you know, Fox is losing money on WWE. I'm not 100% sure that's true, because something that's kind of sort of linked to this is the deal that AEW just signed, you know, with Warner Brothers Discovery. They just were given $1.2 billion over the next 4 to 5 years. And AEW does not quite have the footprint WWE has. But the fact that Warner Brothers sees that much money in that property tells me that, like, Fox is not losing the money that, you know, was reported on months ago, because news would get around the industry like, oh, you shouldn't do this. And again, I always point to also USA. If USA was losing money on this, they wouldn't keep going for it.
Right.
So I just think it's interesting that the Fox network doesn't have them as part of their upfront presentation of things that are coming in the fall. And I mean, they're the Friday night. They're the Friday night lineup.
Yep.
But we'll see, I guess, what ends up happening as far as this. Gags, yes, reality TV to an extent is scripted, although I wouldn't say heavily scripted. Usually it's more of a producer adding elements into it.
Right.
But like most reality TV and game shows don't really require writers so much.
And I'm just going to say this now. For whatever reason, I can't get comments on my end. So if there's any questions or anything said towards the brainless one, just let me know, because I.
All right, Gags the Clown sounds like he would like wrestling to be on Thursday and not Friday night.
It's funny too, because Thursday really is the only night, and I know that like Impact is on Thursdays, but Impact is still, you know, I don't even think a lot of people realize it still exists.
Right.
But like, you got Monday Night Raw, you got NXT on Tuesday, and you got Dynamite on Wednesday, and you got that breather, and then this Friday night you got SmackDown and the people who actually watch Rampage. But I'll tell you right now, this Saturday show at 6:05.
Wait.
Are you kidding me?
It's actually at 8 o'clock. They made sure that it was in prime time. I wish it was at 6:05 myself, but they're doing it 8 o'clock prime time. That was press release.
That's actually, I don't have a problem with that. If it's going to be at 8 o'clock, that's fine. As long as it's not like at 10 o'clock and it's after SmackDown. And it's like, I look at, and here's the thing. I look at Rampage on Fridays the same way I look at that third hour of Monday Night Raw. It is nothing personal against Rampage and what they have, you know, showcased on the show, because one of my personal favorites, Orange Cassidy, wrestles on Rampage quite a bit. It's just after 2 hours of SmackDown, after we do the podcast, the last thing I want to do is stay up for another hour and watch Jay Lethal fight Mark Briscoe for the 12th straight week.
Right.
And it's nothing against those guys either.
Sure. Chris Brown saying Warner Brothers Discovery are delusional if they think AEW has staying power, especially if their top current stars make the jump to WWE. One thing I would say as far as AEW goes, Chris, with signing this deal, that gives them more money to be able to sign the top talent to top dollars, because there are still plenty of people now, with Vince having at least more of a footprint on the creative process here, that might not want to deal with Vince, and they're like, all right, you know what, I can make a good living over here and not have to deal with that. Now you have to deal with you know, the EVPs. I know they're the brainless one's favorite,
Oh yes.
but with having a show like Collision, where they kind of have a I'll call it a moderate brand split, where you have kind of some of the misfit toys, and you got a couple other folks in there, but it seems like the champions are kind of able to jump around and be on that show all the time.
I I'm intrigued because it looks like FTR is going to be exclusively on there. CM Punk, whether I mean, we'll get into the whole CM Punk thing in a bit.
Yeah.
How that influences it all. Apparently, Powerhouse Hobbs is going to be on this show. You're going to have, honestly, if you have a lot of the guys that I like, Miro, Thunder Rosa,
Yeah.
if you put all these people on Saturdays, yeah, I'm absolutely looking for something to watch. Yeah, is
And one of the names that's on that list that's going to be on the Saturday show is Brian Danielson, who is going to be involved in some way, shape, or form in creative.
okay. We're gonna finally get CM Punk versus Brian Danielson again. I cannot wait. Oh my God, they got to make this right with Punk.
This whole situation with Punk, I mean, with how volatile and temperamental it seems to be on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again. This should be the sign to Tony Khan, like, don't do this. Short-term gain for possibly long-term consequences with this. You know, they're, a handful of weeks away from the debut of this show. They want to sell out the United Center and make this look like a big deal. They had press materials ready with CM Punk on it. They actually had a press release with CM Punk's name in it that accidentally got out.
Mm-hmm.
And it all went off the rails because Punk didn't get exactly what he wanted. But off of what's going on right now, and I think Tony Khan is going to cave like a cheap suit here, and we're going to get cousin Chris showing up back behind the scenes at AEW as opposed to being there remotely.
Future effing Marks Hall of Famer cousin Chris.
Right.
We got to mention that.
For
And,
the fight against the Twinkle Toes.
well, hey, somebody in my family had to make the business, and it can't just be Uncle Ray who used to kick or punt for the Raiders,
Right.
or his world famous chicken wings.
100%. Speaking of punters, though, a punter who happens to have affiliation with WWE had a interesting week this week.
Certainly did.
Last year, I think it was, is when one Pat McAfee started on FanDuel on a 4-year deal for $30 million a year. And then there started rumblings about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that maybe he was going to ESPN. I'm like, what exactly is going on here? Like, clearly he had the relationship because of College Game Day.
Yep.
But he was getting $30 million a year. And, like, the only stuff that I've seen come out about news about McAfee and his status, right, is that he's getting 8 figures a year. Well, he was getting 30 million before. I don't think he would jump ship to make less money. But by the way, there are, I believe, several hundred or over 1,000 people. It might even be thousands of people that are about to get laid off from Disney and or ESPN. But they're forking over, I mean, a truck full of cash or Pat McAfee. Now, he is an entity that brings in an audience, known entity that brings in an audience, but what did McAfee have an out with his FanDuel contract? Did ESPN have to pay off a certain amount for this contract and then pay McAfee? There's an awful lot of things that are kind of not out there, and I'm like, I mean, good for you, Pat McAfee, but crap, man. Good too, I guess.
I have so many different opinions about this whole situation. I do know, because I follow Pat McAfee on Twitter. I follow Pat McAfee show on Reddit or whatever the hell you do in Reddit. And all of his followers, all of his fans are pissed because they're calling him a sellout because he said he would never go to do this thing with ESPN, and now they're taking the show there. And I'm going to tell you, the worst part about this is, because his show is great. I enjoy his show. He has some great guests, and him and AJ Hawk are really, really good together. I even liked it when they had freaking Pac-Man Jones when he was on a few episodes. This is going to be like when Zack Ryder sold out and the Z True Long Island story became WWE's property, and they took it and they tore it to shreds, and nobody gave a shit about it anymore. That is exactly what's going to happen with Pat McAfee. He's not going to be able to do. Do you think the conversations he was having with Aaron Rodgers would fly on ESPN? Come on.
I hope within whatever contract he signed with ESPN that he's got the Hulk Hogan deal where he's got creative control, brother.
Oh man, let me tell you something, brother.
Chris Brown saying, and don't forget, Jay, AEW rehired Punk's buddy, Cousin Chris. Yeah, so apparently it looks like Ace Steel was hired somewhere between a month and a half ago to like 4 weeks ago, somewhere in that range, and not many people knew. Basically, I think it was Tony Khan knew, CM Punk knew clearly, Cousin Chris knew, and I don't think too many people beyond that knew, and this was clearly part of the, like, yes, we're bringing you back. We're bringing you back. We're bringing back your friend, because a lot of the media out there talking about Ace Steel, a.k.a. Cousin Chris, and the reason why he was fired because he's a producer and he was supposed to, have he was supposed to go and diffuse a situation instead of elevate it, which is laughable. The other people in the room have higher position than Cousin Chris. I would include CM Punk in that argument of people who had higher positions in the company. Everybody in that room had higher position except for CM Punk's dog.
Which I'm going to get into that too.
Yeah, Chris was the one let go.
And I'm going to get into that too because there was a whole bunch of stuff to unfold and unpack with this whole CM Punk thing. His post from, I think it was either last night or the night before, I think it was 2 nights ago, was just incredible. And all he did was talk about hockey last night. He goes, see, this is what happens when there's no hockey on.
Yeah.
But good on him for getting his job back at least. And I can't believe that our cousin actually withheld that information from us.
Very sad, but we'll have a talking with him at the next Guy family reunion.
Oh, those are fun. Oh, man. There's nothing like just going to some random location with hundreds of people and like, look at all these guys.
Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah? No, I didn't do that. Yes, I did.
I remember the going to the one with Grandpa Guy. I think he had just turned 94. And I think it was like somewhere around Middletown.
Oh, my God, yes. I remember that.
Yeah.
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 Well,
A-
should we?
that whole situation going on there, uh, we've spoke on this ad nauseum about how CM Punk has been very good at even outmaneuvering Vince McMahon in his life, and he's once again outmaneuvered Tony Khan, where Tony Khan will have to adhere to all the things that CM Punk wants to be able to sell out the United Center, to be able to get that big crowd, to get that big reaction. I know they have a backup plan in place to go to a different city if the Punk situation doesn't pan out. Tony Khan's going to make it pan out. As much as they kind of sort of say that, like, CM Punk was not like, a like, we're not going to take this collision show if CM Punk's not there.
Right.
Warner Brothers Discovery clearly wants CM Punk
Yeah.
there.
They
And
would.
they're going to get what they want. CM Punk knows that they want him to be there, so it's going to happen.
And believe me, they shelled out all that money recently, or is on the verge of shelling out. So obviously, they're going to get exactly what they want. So, like you said, if they want Punk there, he's going to wrestle there.
So I'm going to put this in my stone cold lead pipe lock. CM Punk will be at the first episode of Collision, and I don't know who he's going to be feuding with. I mean, I think it seems to make sense that Samoa Joe would be one off the
Who?
top. Brian Danielson, the leading seller of Girl Scout cookies.
Are you talking about the Samoan cookie machine?
Yes.
Thank you.
Here's for cookie that's good enough for me.
Samoans.
Yeah.
Trust me, if they did Punk and Joe right off the bat, sign me up. If they do Punk and Danielson, sign me up. If they want to do Punk and Powerhouse Hobbs, sign me up. Punk and Miro, sign me up. Punk versus Dax Harwood, sign me up. There's not
Punk
much.
is MJF because champions can float, which means I guess the trios championships, if the Bucks ever got them or the Elite ever got them again, wouldn't make their way over there. Thank Jack has it, right? So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be exclusively on Collision, and they're going to be working more.
they were a poster definitely for that. So yeah, the names that I saw specifically: Miro, Thunder Rosa, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, Andrade. The poster that they had featured FTR, MJF, and the House of Black. And it looks like Danielson, Jungle Boy, Scorpio Sky, and Hangman Page may also be part of that roster, which, I mean, Hangman Page possibly being on there is interesting considering his past with CM Punk.
I find that very interesting. I did not know that he was on there. I knew a lot of the other names. I know Orange Cassidy was on the poster, front and center, next to MJF. I was like, there you go. You know who your real champion is. And I'm going to break that all down, too, because I'm going to discuss a little bit about, not tonight. I'm going to have something all set up about Orange Cassidy, the greatest champion in professional wrestling right now. But
Right.
I'm excited for this because I've always enjoyed having wrestling on Saturdays. I love the wrestling pay-per-views on Saturdays. I've always preferred that over Sundays. Greatest decision WWE did was switch to Saturdays. But I'm excited because it is a lot of people. I haven't seen Miro. I don't remember the last time I saw Miro. Was when he had that stupid
last week where they had him do like a walk-in, and
I mean, before he went into Tony Khan's office and talked to Tony Khan about possibly being part of the Collision roster, was the last time we saw the Redeemer was when he teamed up with Sting and Darby Allin to fight the House of Black?
I think so.
Ugh. That poor guy, really?
And do you think having Collision and having the talent that kind of has been less than pleased with their booking, if they're booked well on this show, do they end up staying with the company instead of flying back to WWE? Do you see Miro staying in AEW if he's booked well? Or do you think, like, at this point, he's fed up, but just kind of like, look, I need to be seen in some way, shape, or form, but he's just kind of biding his time until he goes back to WWE?
I I mean, you want me to try to, you want the brainless one to try to figure out the beautiful mind that is Tony Khan, the two-time Booker of the Year. Tony
I,
Khan?
I think three. I think three.
Oh,
Ugh.
I mean, I want to have faith that he is going to do something right. I really do. At the end of the day, as long as Tony Khan is booking for WWE, wow, okay, for as
That's
long,
big.
yeah, if
Oh,
as long as Tony,
booking, but
right, I got my cons mixed up in the promotions that they're in, but as long as Tony Khan is writing for Dynamite or booking for Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision, it's not going to get any better.
100% true.
He's got people. He should be utilizing these people. Why is Jeff Jarrett? Listen, I get it. Jeff Jarrett's one of the best workers in AEW. I cannot believe I'm saying that in 2023 about Jeff Jarrett being one of the best workers in a wrestling promotion. But Jeff Jarrett's one of the best workers in the ring. You should be utilizing him in booking. He might have learned a thing or two from his dad.
Well, I mean, on top of like he was the main driver behind Impact for many years. First 15 years of the promotion. And he clearly understands the business really well, and his job right now is kind of the live events. And with the start of Collision, the idea is I think they're doing like a tour of Canada, and they're actually doing a lot of the shows in the Canadian market where, wrestling is a hot commodity. So you're going to have hot crowds. You're going to have people really into the show. But he definitely needs to hire more people that he could trust. But at this moment, like, who is out there that he could take on board, who is experienced and can do the job he needs at a high level and be like highly motivated for that?
Gee, Jay, I have no idea who could actually be out there who, A, has a great wrestling mind, B, has worked in the industry, and not only worked in the industry, C, books for the industry, ran a wrestling promotion. He had multiple tours with Vince McMahon. He worked for, I don't know if he worked for Turner, but I know he worked for Jim Herd. I mean,
He want back in though.
if I'm telling you,
Want back in, I should say.
as the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase has said a million times, everybody's got a price. He could work with Cornette. Cornette could, and I know that I'm going to get, a lot of people are going to be giving me grief for this, but at the end of the day, Cornette does know how to book. He's got experience. I know that he's kind of old in his ways, and we all know that he would absolutely sacrifice Orange Cassidy in the middle of a match, and then Twinkle Toes would actually come out in like a ballet dress. We all know this. But if there's, I mean, what are your other options? Vince Russo? Dave Lagana?
Clearly not Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, I mean, him and Bischoff hate each other. Who else is out there? There's nobody. You got Jeff. I'm telling you right now, the answer to his problems is Jeff Jarrett. Listen. I know that I've for years, for decades even, I've had not said a positive thing about Jeff Jarrett in my entire existence of knowing that he exists. And I will tell you this: the man is a great wrestling mind. He learned from Jerry Jarrett. If Vince McMahon had gone to jail, it was going to be Jerry Jarrett that was going to run WWE. I don't know if a lot of people know that. So Vince had a lot of faith and trust in Jerry Jarrett. And honestly, if I were Tony Khan and I was smart and not a freaking Mark who likes to fantasy book on national television, I would put Jarrett. Hell, just give him Collision. All right, Jeff, let's see what you got. You got this new show. Let's see what you got. That would be your test. I think you would do a hell of a job running Collision.
We shall see what comes of Collision, but in past episodes, I've made my opinion known about, like, I think that the AEW product went downhill the moment they introduced Rampage. And the fact that, like, there were things that happened, I think it was on Dark and Elevation, where there were mistakes made in the production process where Tony Khan felt like, well, now I have to oversee these. They've removed Dark and Elevation from that whole process, but it's like he is now booking for 4 shows: Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, and Ring of Honor. And, oh, by the way, still has some sort of thing going on with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And they got a soccer team, too.
Yeah. So I would say Tony Khan is running thin. If he just had one show, I think he'd be fine. But when he's trying to fantasy book for 4 shows, at some point, things go.
Yep. He's going to have a meltdown in the next 5 years. I can see it. And it's nothing, and that's not something I'm hoping for or I'm wishing for. That man has more things on his plate than the dude who can eat at Thanksgiving Day. It's crazy how much stuff he does. Because he does a lot of stuff for the Jaguars, too. He really does. I don't know how he does it. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I respect the hell out of him for doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, when you're in over your head, you gotta do something. It's, I'm not one of those ones. I don't want to see AEW fail. I don't. Because I remember what it was like for years, for a couple decades even, where WWE was the only show in town, and the only competition it had was Impact, who was taking all the guys they were releasing and just pushing them, But if he doesn't kind of take his foot off the pedal and just kind of take a back seat to a few things, he's going to have a nervous breakdown in 5 years. And I don't know what's going to happen with AEW if he's not running the show. Because I don't think Chad Khan gives as much of a fuck about AEW as his son does.
Right. But clearly with this deal, I mean, AEW is going to be around in some way, shape, or form for the next 4 or 5 years. So as much as there are a lot of folks out there that like, oh, this is going to might last a couple of years, and good for that. But, at this point, we are They started in 2019. We're 4 years in, and they just signed either a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal. So they have the financials to keep on operating for the next. They'll get close to where they're in existence for a decade.
Oh, easily.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it's like I said, I still think that the company's going to be in trouble if anything happens to Tony, because they're not going to have, because if he's booking all these shows and he's running the whole operation and he's part of the whole cash flow and everything, who's gonna step up to the plate? Kenny Omega, if he's still there in 5 years, the guy who we're still waiting for fighting forever because it's taking forever.
And allegedly that's another thing that came out this week, that we might get a release date, and the release date might be coinciding with Forbidden Door.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of it. As Brian Cox said in Super Troopers, I'll believe that when me shit turns purple and smells like rainbow sherbet. I'll believe it when I see it. They've been saying this video game's been coming out for 2 years. WWE's had 2 video games been released since they announced that AEW Fight Forever was going to come out. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't have enough data in the game for all the blood that Moxley wants.
Right.
Oh,
I've heard in the game, one of the things is you win a championship if you fight in a match with Moxley and he doesn't bleed.
I didn't get the post Wednesday or yesterday because he actually didn't bleed on Wednesday. And he was showcased quite a bit on Wednesday because they came in and they attacked the Young Bucks in the parking lot. And then at the end, they had the little confrontation. And then the one-eyed Hangman Page returned. And, oh, my God, the Elite is together. And Hangman Page. And we're going to have anarchy in the arena. I don't think Moxley bled. Which is now twice in 2023 that he hasn't bled.
That's called the shocker.
I was thinking about it, I was like, I think I should have posted that picture again because he bled last Wednesday, and Wednesday was Dynamite, so he definitely bled. I mean, if he's on Rampage tonight, I'm gonna have to post it. But I know Rampage is on now. But I mean, I mean, I don't know if he's gonna be on Collision or not, so that's another day I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna see if he goes to GCW or any of these other stupid shows. Like when he goes back to New Japan, I'm gonna have to check on that too.
Yeah.
Watching Moxley like a hawk.
I 100% agree that Jon Moxley should be in a slasher film. and joined by Bray Wyatt, who is not on the internal roster of WWE at the current moment. So poor Alexa Bliss, who seems like she's ready to return, and Road Dogg, one of the Brainless One's favorite people in WWE, mentioned a couple of weeks back that there has been a writer assigned specifically for Bray Wyatt. So what's the truth here? Is Bray Wyatt not on the roster anymore? Have they hired somebody to write for Bray Wyatt? And what the hell?
I was reading before the podcast that he is on the same list as the likes of Randy Orton, Tommaso Ciampa, Bobby Roode. People who are out of action, who are not on the internal roster, but they're still on the payroll. Bray Wyatt's still collecting a paycheck. Bray Wyatt apparently is still suffering from this, long-dated COVID or whatever the hell it was that he had. I don't know what the hell the deal is. I mean, Eric Young has been under contract since November.
So you got a lot of people whose careers are kind of on hold and again, rumored that it's long COVID with Bray. There are ways that you could bring Bray to TV. I mean, how long did we have him on TV, and he only had one match? They could
Yeah.
have him in of a faction and just have all the minions do the dirty work.
Yep.
If they think like, all right, well, it's getting better, you could have him come back. You could have Eric Young come back. You could have Alexa Bliss come back
Yeah.
and do their thing as part of the Wyatt Six.
You can believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll say this as somebody who did at one of the, I've lost count of many times I've had COVID. I did have like that long standing COVID after, and that shit lasted for months. I was wheezy. I sounded like I felt like I had gunk in my lungs. And the best part was is about a week after I got rid of it, I caught COVID again. Yeah.
You are going to beat Ric Flair.
Jay, I'm gonna beat Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, maybe we should let's get the sad note out of the way.
Yeah.
So I believe it was yesterday. Ric Flair, of all people, I never would have thought that would have happened. But Ric Flair yesterday announced to the world that superstar Billy Graham passed away at the age of 79. Billy Graham was one of the most influential wrestlers of the, even before the golden era. Billy Graham was the poster of a lot of the wrestlers of the 80s and the guys that we grew up on. They idolized superstar Billy Graham. Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura.
Clearly Ric Flair.
Clearly Ric Flair, yes. It's, for me, I don't have any kind of like a memory of Billy Graham because all I remember Billy Graham for, unfortunately, and I apologize for this, even though I know that he was so influential in all these people's careers, all I remember Billy Graham for was for the last 20 years crying about Vince McMahon and WWE. And I'm sorry for that because you look at how influential he was on a lot of the wrestlers that we grew up watching. And he's a former...
You could see that Jesse Ventura was like, like he did the body stuff, but he also had the colorful outfits, like Billy Graham did. Billy Graham talked about the 22-inch arms. Hulk Hogan talked about the 24-inch pythons, brother, and he was, I think, the first person that had the moniker superstar. And the fact that now all WWE competitors are referred to as superstars goes back to Billy Graham. For me, my recollections of Billy Graham weren't as a performer. I remember him coming back as like a manager and inspirational figure for Don Morocco in the 80s. And you know, he wore his like tie-dye outfits. In the 80s, he had the shaved head and he had the goatee. You know, it was definitely a different look than what he had in the 70s when you know, he was just chiseled, but had like a unique look and a persona. You know, you have to say, if he influenced Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan that heavily, there are no bigger 80s icons in professional wrestling than those two names. Hulk Hogan catapulted professional wrestling as a national entity, not a regional entity.
Yep.
Ric Flair is for all the misgivings of Ric Flair. Ric Flair continues to be an icon today where people woo all the time.
And I'll tell you right now, there's not many wrestling fans out there that if you ask them who is on their Rushmore, that those two names don't pop up. At least one, if not both.
And the only reason why Hogan these days doesn't show up quite as much is because of the crap he said. If you're talking just strictly like influence, he has to be there.
Yeah.
He has to be there. Now, if you're like, he's a piece of crap and I'm not putting him on there, that's a different conversation.
They just need to just showcase him once a year. In fact, he should just host WrestleMania every year because it's the best part about WrestleMania when Hulk Hogan comes out, you know, Real American starts playing and the yellow and the red's flowing and Hulk Hogan's got his sunglasses on and he gets out there and he gets on the microphone. Let me tell you something, brother. And then he misnames, you know, he gets the whole name of the arena.
Angeles Coliseum before WrestleMania 7, brother, and I fought Sergeant Slaughter to defeat Iraq.
But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned.
We weren't there.
No, you're right. I'm glad you mentioned Sergeant Slaughter. I have a question for you I want to get to at some point.
Okay.
I have actually a few questions I have for you specifically, sir, once we get to that point. But let's close out the Billy Graham thing.
I mean, Billy Graham really like an icon in sports entertainment, professional wrestling. He was in a territory that was considered a face territory. He was a heel champion because that's how big of a deal he was. That's how big of a draw he was. The fact that people are called superstars these days. The fact that Hogan, Ventura, Flair, and countless others, but those are the biggest names, mimicked their gimmick off of him. You know, Ventura was more of a clear line.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was a heel and wore the bright colors, you know, had like the feathered like tassels, did things more in line with Billy Graham. He was more direct line, where Hogan, you know, took pieces of it. Flair took pieces. Flair took a lot of pieces. I honestly, I would say Flair in many ways is similar to Dolph Ziggler, where like taking a bunch of pieces from a bunch of different characters while also putting himself into it.
Yeah.
And Billy Graham was a big influence in the industry. Clearly, as he got older, he was bitter and pissed off about a bunch of things. I don't know if many of them he had rightly to be upset about, but he did a lot for the industry. I respect what he did, and you know, I know that he had been dealing with health issues for basically the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
And that really sucks. When you're just never healthy, you never feel well.
Yep.
And he is finally at, you know, earthly peace. He doesn't have to deal with a body that's quitting on him. So, superstar Billy Graham, I salute you for what you've done for the industry, and I hope you do have the peace that your body clearly needed.
I tip my hat to you, superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to segue from something like this. But we shall trek on. So last week on SmackDown, one important match and one important announcement happened in regards to Night of Champions. The first thing we got was the triple threat matches where AJ Styles, surprisingly to a lot of people, won his triple threat with Rey Mysterio and Edge.
Would you call it a shocker?
I would say yes. The only thing that would have been more shocking is if Theory won his, which he didn't. And Bobby Lashley went over. Bobby Lashley got busted open, but Bobby Lashley went over in that match. And then we got AJ Styles versus Bobby Lashley in the finals. Solid match between the two of them. I don't know if they actually worked together in Impact. I don't know if Styles was already in Japan when Bobby got there or not. I don't want to assume. But, I mean, hell, that was a hell of a match between the two of them. And AJ Styles went over in the end. And we are getting AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins in Jeddah. Seth Franklin Rollins in Jeddah for the World Heavyweight Championship at Night of Sand Champions.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
This will be a great match.
Yep.
There have been a few matches that WWE has booked that were thought to be dream matches that ended up being kind of falling flat. Specifically with AJ Styles. I hope that's not the case with this one. I'm not going to watch it because of where it's taking place, but these two in the ring, I have a strong feeling this is going to be pretty freaking awesome. It's going to be Franklin awesome. Franklin awesome over in Jeddah, and I'm going. I mean, spoiler alert. Not that like I really want to promote what's going on in Saudi Arabia at Night of Champions, but Seth Rollins should win this match, and they want to have the best match possible to get that crowd popping.
I'm not going to go out of my way to watch the Saudi show, but if I happen upon said match on YouTube, I'm going to be inclined to watch it. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it, but if I happen upon the match, I'm going to watch it. I think that's fair.
Yeah, to be fair.
Be fair. And I know Chris Brown mentioned when we were having the technical difficulties, before we started having the first round of technical difficulties, he had mentioned that Seth Rollins has been on the set of the new Captain America movie, and I'm curious to see if that plays a role in what happens for the World Heavyweight Championship.
So with Rollins, he has like an undisclosed role. They showed a couple of on-set photos. They have Roman Reigns as their champion right now, who doesn't show up very often, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Seth Rollins has a couple of obligations for Captain America 4, a couple, he should
Our
be
buddies.
given some freaking grace.
Yeah.
They shouldn't say, nope, 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 we need a fighting champion who's there every week. It's like, look in the mirror.
Hey, I would be on board with it because I really do think there's nobody else right now, and it's not a slight on Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes has to finish the story on SmackDown. He needs to go get the title that his dad never won.
The WWE title. He doesn't need to win a championship that's just been whether you believe it's something that's been resurrected or you believe it's something that's like out of thin air.
Oh, it's definitely.
I don't know if WWE's going to consider it a part of the lineage of the World Heavyweight Championship that they had, several years ago.
Jay, of course it was resurrected. It looks like a zombie.
Brains. Yeah.
But my whole point is that there's nobody that's deserving of this title more than Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins has been the backbone, the MVP, whatever. We talked about it last week. Seth Rollins has been the MVP just as much as Moxley's been the MVP of AEW. Every match that Seth Rollins has been put into, he has delivered. He made Omos look like $1 million. He made Cody Rhodes look phenomenal in 3 straight pay-per-views. He made Riddle look good. He makes everybody look good. The man deserves it, but the problem is that Triple H backed himself in the corner with this title because he said that this is a championship that's going to be wrestled anytime, anywhere, any place, blah, 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 blah. So obviously they're going to need, they want that champion to be around because Roman Reigns is part-time and they, for whatever reason, don't want to take any of the titles off of him.
Right.
But this whole thing where it's like, I get that you have the ratings, but the fact that you had a Raw superstar go up against a SmackDown superstar, and now there's talks that the SmackDown superstar who shouldn't have the World Heavyweight Championship because Roman Reigns is the world champion, the WWE Universal Undisputed whatever on SmackDown. You can't have the world champion on SmackDown. Raw really needs a champion. You're going to make a bigger mess because now AJ Styles, he's part of a faction. So does that mean that the rest of his OC with Mia Yim are going to get moved back to Raw? So we're not just going to get a straight up trade. We're going to get like 4 people or 2 people or, Elias.
Which again, spins my belief that it's Seth Rollins. It makes the most sense, and they just want to have the best match they possibly can. I think that Seth could have great matches with Lashley. They clearly proved that when there's chemistry there when they were doing the thing between him, Theory, and Lashley.
Yeah.
But they wanted to have a fresh match for Night of Champions. This isn't like a first-time match, but like something we haven't seen at least in a little bit of time.
Well, it's good because you got to get AJ Styles out there because at the end of the day, we've talked about it. They don't have enough main eventers. So AJ Styles is a main eventer. AJ Styles should fight for the World Heavyweight Championship. And when he loses, he should go fight Roman. I know that would defeat the purpose because if you had the guy lose the World Heavyweight Champion go up against the superior champion, obviously. But at the end of the day, who's more of a contender on SmackDown than AJ Styles? We're talking about AJ fucking Styles.
Yeah.
So
Chris Brown said, now with regards to the match, if they don't give it to Rollins because of the movie, what does it say about WWE booking when both Seth and Cody eat an L, pissing off the fan base? The belief is if Seth is unable to make house show circuit, the title is going to AJ. Now, I'm going to say that I highly doubt Seth Rollins is the main villain in Captain America. I highly doubt that Seth Rollins' main thing for this is to leave WWE in the next year. Seth Rollins has been about as dependable of an employee as you can ask for in the last decade or so in the company.
agreed.
again, Seth Rollins is winning this title.
I really hope, because like I said, he deserves it. Maybe they're just throwing out these rumors and the AJ stuff just to kind of get people off the scent. And hell, if that was the case, you could still have Seth Rollins win the title. You got Money in the Bank coming up really soon. If he's really gonna be stuck in these things, have him hold the title, and then when you get the new Money in the Bank winner, have him. Yeah, exactly. LA Knight could go and win the World Heavyweight Championship. Who wouldn't want to see that?
All right. Chris Brown said, tell Brainless One that the plan is for Gunther to drop the IC title next week and be elevated to main event status on SmackDown. I think they really want Gunther to pass the honkometer they want to get rid of. They want Gunther to surpass Honky Tonk Man, and Honky Tonk, for him to pass Honky Tonk Man, I believe he has to hold the title until September.
Yep.
Why would they do all this build for him to then, because if Rollins wins the title at Jeddah, are you going to feed Gunther to him? Are you going to put Gunther against Roman Reigns to lose? What? If part of the thing the WWE is doing is trying to reset the record books, doesn't make a lot of sense to have Gunther lose the title next week.
He's fighting Mustafa Ali. I'm sorry. They mentioned it. He's been on the main roster.
That would be similar to if they had Zelina Vega win in Puerto Rico. Not exactly the same, but similar. It would make the crowd happy, but long term, I don't think makes a lot of sense.
Especially because the way you've had Mustafa Ali booked all the way up until this point, that he won this battle royal that I really didn't think he deserved to win. I'm sorry. I thought there was other people that would have made a better match. I get why they're doing it. But if that was the case, why didn't it Mansoor? Because they didn't. Mansoor.
Right.
Is he going to have a match? Tell me the maximum male models are wrestling at Jeddah. I'll watch that. Just because I know that dude's going to get that freaking Carlito pop that he got in Puerto Rico when he comes out.
Right.
And then he's going to come out dressed like he is, and I just want to see all of Saudi Arabia just their brains melt at the same time. Mansoor!
Chris Brown, they do need credible threats for Roman, but, Roman is now on the Money in the Bank poster. Who they can build up between now and then, or who says that he and Solo don't become the tag team champions?
I'm glad you said that, because that was the thing I was also going to mention from SmackDown. Was this past Friday, Roman Reigns and Solo came out, and they were talking about the tag team championships, and they said that they, not Jimmy and Jey Uso, Roman and Solo will be fighting Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in Saudi. Wait, hold on. What? What did I just say? Did I just say that right? No. Let me hold on. Let me just. I gotta read. Let me just look at my note. Hold on. Let me just. Okay.
Yeah.
It says here that Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa are going to be going against Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in Saudi Arabia.
So, one of the things going on politically in Saudi Arabia, so Saudi Arabia did not agree with what Syria was doing during their civil war, and this is one of the things I 100% agree with the Saudi government. That they were killing their own people. But to hold that against somebody who has Syrian descent, I think is at least as somebody with an American perspective, that feels a little out of place. but um, you know, going back to the last time they were in Saudi Arabia, and you had the crowd and the press corps chanting for Sami Zayn. The general public does not care about where he comes from. They love Sami Zayn. Beyond that, apparently there have been some bridges that have kind of been crossed as far as reestablishing some political kind of affiliation back and forth between Syria and Saudi Arabia. And ironically enough, WWE being the like bastion of peace in the Middle East. WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump got peace between many countries in Israel. And now WWE bridging the schism between Syria and Saudi Arabia is going to be the thing that brings about world peace.
It's going to be Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn, after what happened the last time in Saudi Arabia, they decided that they needed to mend fences with the Syrian government, and they've been trying to play nice and try to get some peace between the groups. So, and now Sami Zayn's wrestling in Saudi Arabia next week. Sami Zayn brought peace between Saudi Arabia and Syria, and you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other side of this, though, I didn't know what to think when I saw it on Friday last week. I was like, what? No. But, so, they're doing this whole thing with Roman, and I've had my opinions about Roman throughout this entire reign, as I thought it's been great, but as it's dragged on like a Bray Wyatt storyline, I have kind of gotten...
The long, flowing, wet-haired locks of Roman Reigns.
He's coming like Veer. But they're doing all this stuff, and they're trying to tout all this stuff about him being the longest reigning champion and breaking all these records and getting to 1,000 days and possibly passing Morales and one of Bruno's reigns and Hogan and whoever else they want him to pass. So he's now going to go to Jeddah and he's going to fight for the tag team titles?
He is trying to steal and take the belt moniker, the belt collector moniker, from one Twinkle Toes.
And he's got 2 championships that Twinkle Toes will never wear.
Yeah.
So, just out of curiosity, are we doing predictions for next week?
I'll do predictions.
Yes. All right, because I was going to say what my big prediction was going to be for next week, but I'll save it for next week.
Okay. Chris Brown is saying the Usos will cost Solo and Roman the match. What do you say, Brainless One? I mean, I don't want to steal the thunder of next week, but
Roman Reigns is going to walk out with 4 championships next week.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll tell you right now, they booked themselves into a very bad corner that the only way that it would make sense for them to have this match without Roman actually winning this match is if Jimmy and Jay do get involved. So, yes, I do see that Jimmy and Jay will ultimately cost Roman and Solo the tag team championships, but you know me, I swing for the fences. If I'm going to make a prediction, I'm not going to make a prediction that makes sense. No, I'm going to go inside this brainless brain of mine and pull something out, so I'm picking Roman and Solo next week.
Okay. Hey.
Now, mind you, I have a whole week between now and then. I might change my mind. It's me, so I'm probably going to change my mind.
So beyond that, it was rumored that we were going to get a WWE show in India in January. That didn't happen. And now it looks like we are getting a WWE show in India in September, where I know that this is several months away, but I think we might get new Universal Tag Team Champions, possibly in a Punjabi prison match. Probably not, but possibly. But I think it's official.
It is.
The WWE is going back to India.
Tony Khan's estranged cousin Nick came out and announced that they were doing the show in India earlier this week. Are you kidding me? I'm so happy because I don't know who should I tweet at? Should I tweet at? I'm going to tweet at somebody every day in WWE, and it's just be a picture of the Punjabi prison. Should I tweet at Vince?
Which clearly is the target for that.
Well, I don't want Jay. I have a tendency of getting blocked by certain people. I don't know how I'd feel if Triple H blocked me. If Vince blocked me, it's Vince. But
right.
I'll just tweet at WWE and I'll just put a Punjabi prison.
Tweet it to Jinder. He'll make it happen. He was in the last Punjabi prison match that we saw.
So what you're telling me is I have to tweet at the Great Khali then?
Yes.
Okay, done. Speaking of premium live events, Bad Bunny came out and did an interview this week and said that his performance at Backlash was the greatest moment of his life.
Like Rick at the 92 Royal Rumble.
Yes. And I honest to goodness, there's no way that I could actually like this dude any more than I already do, except for when he finally breaks up for whatever Kardashian he's dating. But that is so cool. I mean, he's the #1 recording artist in the world. And he said the greatest moment was wrestling in home.
With a sigh.
With a tear in his eye and a kendo stick in his hand with Carlito barreling towards the ring. Was the greatest moment of his life. I like this dude. He takes the business serious. And I know a lot of people, when they brought in the celebrities, they were always upset because the celebrities were in there just to get that paycheck and not really take it as serious. I mean, Floyd Mayweather made a mockery of the shit when he fought the Big Show many, many moons ago. God, one of my least favorite matches in WrestleMania history. But Bad Bunny, Logan Paul, got to give them both their respects. But Bad Bunny has taken this so seriously. He has learned the craft, and this dude just really, he gets it. He gets it, and he's a fan, and he's enjoying what he's doing, and I love what is happening.
Yeah. No, I was extremely skeptical of when they brought Bad Bunny in. I thought he was going to be another one of these dudes that was like just in it for the publicity, and he proved me wrong. I'm happy to be wrong about somebody like that.
Yeah.
Clearly respects the business and went out of his way to really like make Backlash into something like special.
He got that Hulk Hogan pop.
Yeah.
It was good shit. It was such good shit, pal.
So on the interesting note, like, and this is one of those things, like, this doesn't spell anything bad for Dark Side of the Ring, but Vice this week declared bankruptcy. And Dark Side of the Ring is their top property. So bankruptcy doesn't mean you're going out of business. There are several really interested entities in Vice. Dark Side of the Ring Season 4 has already been recorded. That
comes out next weekend.
Happen, but it's certainly one of those things that you're like, what the hell's going
Right.
on? Will we see season 4? We're going to see season 4 of Dark Side of the Ring. There is somebody who is going to buy Vice.
Oh yeah.
And if Vice isn't bought, bankruptcy doesn't mean you're out of business. It means that you're reorganizing things.
Yep.
So we will see Dark Side of the Ring season 4 and all that's in that. And one of which is one Marty Jannetty, who did an interview this week where he said he would love to have the opportunity to teach the Stars of Tomorrow at NXT.
I know that him and Shawn Michaels have known each other for a very, very long time. What in the blue fuck is he going to teach them? How to run through a pane glass window?
How to admit to murdering somebody several years after it happened? How to have sex with your daughter?
Well, I mean, the fact is that the man is known forever as the less
Jannetty.
successful pile of shit half of a tag team that just it's who's the Marty Jannetty of the tag team.
And I would still argue if you're talking on accolades, Marty Jannetty should be a WWE Hall of Famer. Former Intercontinental Champion, former Tag Team Champion, higher than Coco Beware. Was in the company longer than Coco Beware. Was in higher profile matches than Coco Beware. He's a piece of crap. And it would be a black eye to have him in said Hall of Fame. But if you're talking about booking accolades, Marty Jannetty is above the Coco Beware line. But as a human being, the fact that he possibly slept with, I don't know if it was a biological daughter, I think it was a stepdaughter, possibly killed somebody, kind of sort of admitted to killing somebody. Marty Jannetty around the next generation of professional wrestlers. No, thank you, sir.
What they can't
crack den.
They can't reincarnate Chris Benoit.
Whatever den you're in, whatever drug den you're in right now. Actually, you know what? I pray for your salvation, sir.
He's Marty Jannetty. That's all I have to say.
Right. I would trust Sid to teach NXT or next level recruits before I'd trust Marty. That and I quote from Chris Brown. Yes.
I would rather have Scott Steiner teach my daughter math.
Well, I mean, he is PhD level.
Actually, who am I kidding? That math that he was spot. I mean, the fact that he rattled that all off and just got none of it wrong and the math was flawless, because I've gone back and I've dissected it.
He won the 3% chance.
The numbers don't lie.
They spelled disaster for you at sacrifice.
Yeah?
Chris Brown says, today, Dustin Runnels, a.k.a. Goldust, a.k.a. Dustin Rhodes, 15 years sober. Congratulations to you, sir. You know, when you were the Dark Reign character in TNA, you were out of shape and clearly just in a bad place in life.
Yep.
About, I think it was a year year and a half later, WWE gave you an opportunity. And since then, you have been a solid citizen, a solid performer. Congratulations, dude, on getting your shit right and continuing to keep your shit right. And 4 years ago, in my view, having the best match of the year with your brother, a match that WWE said, nope, not WrestleMania level. That was a fucking awesome match, and WWE screwed up. I bet.
And I'll tell you right now, I was
the company that would admit they screwed up.
Yeah.
Not Vince and his dastardly mustache, but people within the company would admit it.
And honestly, I was going to mention that later on in the podcast, and a very important part of the podcast. So, but hey, kudos to you. I'm glad that 15 years sober, and I'll tell you, as somebody who smoked cigarettes for forever, it's not an easy thing to do to quit something like that. And I've quit for like 2 years now, something like that, over 2 years. I don't even remember. That's how long ago it's been.
I think it's been longer than that.
It got to be. I don't remember, Jay.
Yeah.
It's been so long that I forget when the last time I had one was.
All right, so the continued situation with Drew McIntyre evolves. McIntyre wrestled at WrestleMania a month and a half ago. He did that match despite the fact that he had some nagging issues that he was dealing with. And it seems like most of those nagging issues are gone, but he will not return to WWE TV until he and WWE Creative come to an understanding about where he's going forward. It sounds like WWE Creative, and I agree with WWE Creative, want him to go heel.
Yep.
It sounds like he doesn't want to, but he has issues with the creative direction of what they've done with him. I mean, it's clear that they didn't know. They had the Banger Brothers for like 2 weeks, realized, oh wait, the name is probably a bad idea. and then broke him up from Drew, or broke him up from Sheamus, but it's like, all right, where the hell is he going? You can't have him love and hate Sheamus every other week. I mean, this isn't the Big Show we're dealing with.
Honestly, Jay, I've had my opinion about Drew McIntyre as a face. Drew McIntyre is kind of like that kid who thinks he's cool because he does the stupid posing everywhere he goes. He's better as a badass as a heel. I prefer heel Drew as long as it wasn't like, 3-man band Drew McIntyre. But
hey, 3-man band Drew is great. They made it work. They took a crappy gimmick and like seeing Jinder with the turban, like doing air guitar. That was one of my. You could tell that they're like, we don't really like this, but we are going to make it the best we can, and we're going to have fun with this stuff. And Heath Slater has kids, and he had to make sure the kids were taken care of. And yeah. Chris Brown saying that Drew wants a face run with the title to make up for not having the title run in front of fans. And he says, I don't blame him for feeling that way.
I don't either. He deserves to have the championship in front of the fans, whether he's a face or a heel.
Championship in front of the fans, but I think at this point his current face character is about 2 weeks overdue.
He's got to get rid of Veronica. I got my trusty sword, Veronica. Or whatever. I'm sorry. I know it's named after his deceased mother. I forget what it is. Angela. Angela. That's what it is.
So, was AEW getting all this extra money infused into their coffers entice Drew enough that he will get paid enough to not have to deal with quite as much WWBS, and maybe he goes to Collision because he doesn't want to deal with Kenny and the Bucks.
I mean, until this all, I don't want to speculate because I know that you could go there, but it's like you got to see what they're doing with Miro. You got to see what they've done with Andrade and a bunch of these other guys, and it's not like everybody gets, all these different people get showcased. It's just a few choice. It's like almost every week we get the Elite, or we get John Moxley bleeding, or we get Orange Cassidy going up against a random person with the International Championship on the line. And then we get Jeff Jarrett hitting somebody with a guitar. And oh my God, I just did the outline for freaking Dynamite this week.
Right.
But you got to look at it like that. You got to see how people are, getting treated over there. And I am curious to see how it works with this whole Collision thing with this soft brand split. And I know that we had mentioned it earlier on the podcast with the potential free agents for AEW, going, possibly to WWE, especially because the biggest name out there is going to be MJF in probably about 6-7 months. It's going to be MJF as the biggest free agent.
Sure.
So obviously I'll tell you how they handle Cody is going to play a big role in what happens with any other AEW stars going forward, who, especially the ones that don't know what it's like to work under that WWE umbrella. Somebody like a Miro or an Aleister Black going back, that's one thing. But when it's somebody like an MJF or if it's Ricky Starks or Powerhouse Hobbs or Wardlow, if any of these guys go, it's like, all right, this is a different thing because I don't know what it's like in WWE. Cody making the jump made all the sense in the world because Cody should have never, Cody was built for WWE. I'm sorry. But with the Drew thing, again, I like to see what happens with Collision. I know his contract doesn't expire before Collision starts. I know they were trying to get him in. I think there was talks of having him in for All In or even for the Forbidden Door, but he's still under contract at that point too. So
it looks like he's under contract until it sounds like Royal Rumble or after.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what happens. I like to see him end up back in Impact before he goes to AEW. Just personally.
Okay.
If he doesn't stay in WWE, obviously. I'd like
weeks and months.
My personal preference is to see him stay in WWE because I've enjoyed Drew. Bearded Drew is a cool Drew. As long as he gets rid of the sword and stops doing all the stupid posing that he does. Like he thinks he's freaking Mel Gibson in Braveheart. And I'd like to keep him there or just go to Impact. I don't know if he would actually be a fit in AEW. But we'll see.
All right.
Speaking of people in AEW, one Jay Lethal put in this week for the trademark for Black Machismo. I'll admit.
I'd be against seeing the return of Black Machismo.
I'll admit, I was never the biggest Impact fan. I always enjoyed Eric Young as a competitor, The Abyss, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. Those are guys I liked all those guys when they were in Impact. I watched whenever I could. If it was on, I would watch.
Sting!
Jay Lethal as as Black Machismo was one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen in wrestling. I am 100% on board with seeing Black Machismo return in AEW.
And when he was with Austin Creed, a.k.a. Xavier Woods, and were Lethal Consequences, one of the most fun tag teams in all of professional wrestling. They were TNA tag team champions, and just, you want to talk about sports entertainment and like being the entertainment part of that while also being like good performers. Both of those guys were that.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get Lethal Consequences back anytime soon, but I would love to see Black Machismo make a return to television.
He makes Jeff Jarrett less irritating. I have done a complete 180 on Jay Lethal. I wasn't a huge fan of his, but he's been really killing it since he went to AEW. Him and it's sad when Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett are one of your most legitimate tag team threats in your tag team division in 2023. Just saying. Also, Jay, this past week on Raw, after the Battle Royal, there was an interview between Kathy Kelly and JD McDonough. And she was asking all these questions about to JD McDonough and everything, going after Dolph Ziggler, after his elimination from the Battle Royal. But there was one interesting tidbit from that. One leader of the Spooky Pals, Finn Balor, was seen watching the interview. Spooky Pals was seen watching the interview, and there's been, because there was speculation over the weekend that Finn Balor, or not really Finn Balor, but they were talking about moving JD McDonough into the Spooky Pals because of the connection he has with Finn Balor, since Finn Balor helped train him into a professional wrestler. Then we get the little thing. I'm telling you, I would like to see JD McDonough in the Spooky Pals.
It makes a lot of sense. With the Spooky Pals, you got the two, I can't even really call them elder statesmen, at least in WWE. Both Damian Priest and Finn Balor have been in the wrestling business for quite a while. To the WWE audience, they're still relatively new, like specifically Damian Priest. Finn Balor's been there for, more than a cup of coffee, but, has never really been highlighted on the main roster as a true main event player. And despite all WWE could do to book the Spooky Pals really shittily in the beginning of Finn Balor with them, they have done a lot to right that ship. Adding to the family is not a bad idea, and taking somebody who, was and is a protege of Finn Balor to pass the torch to. You've got Rhea in the group. You've got Condom in the group as the younglings, and you add somebody like JD McDonough to be another piece of building for the future instead of having it be mostly older people, even if you have high regard for them. Like, how long could Finn, how long could Damian Priest be at that top level where they're doing house shows, where they're doing all this stuff late into their 40s? Edge doesn't do a lot of house shows. Edge doesn't do a lot of TV, and, he's 7 or 8 years older than them.
Yep.
I think they have 5 years or less to really, do something.
Agreed. But since I did bring it up, it got me to the questions I was going to ask you. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what are your thoughts on Imperium adding Dragunov?
Hmm. Intriguing, but I don't know if I'm in love with it. I know that he and Walter, aka Gunther, have a past. They could build on that past if they want to. I think Dragunov is badass himself enough to make his own mark without having to, ride the coattails of something that, like, with Imperium, it's Walter's thing. And I think adding Dragunov, well, I'm not going to say dilute it, but it would just, why are you adding him? What does he add to the faction? Like, as far as prestige, as far as a new face, as far as any of that. He's not the heavy because Walter is clearly the heavy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Walter is the brains of the outfit too. So Dragunov can't be the brains of the outfit. What would Dragunov be? They would have to make it something extremely unique to make it work, and I don't see a way where they can make that where it would work specifically for Dragunov. They could make it work where it'll work for Walter and the group in general if they didn't have like any expectations of Dragunov. But you're talking about a dude who routinely puts out 4.5 to 5-star matches. Why would you saddle him with not being a guy who's spotlighted?
My thing would be, and because honest to goodness, my first thought was the exact same thing that you said. I was intrigued, but I didn't love the idea because I saw it and I wanted to ask you. My thing would be is that he adds a little bit more legitimacy to it because of the way that they have booked Marcel Bartel and now
Yeah, yeah.
Vincenzi Vinci or
The
Fabian
the
Achner as he used to be known
see
as.
this week is he
Yeah.
Vincenzo this week? Like,
And like until you can really bring those guys up, because I know that Bartel does a hell of a job at the presentation of Gunther. That whole thing, even catching the jacket and everything he did, just everything about it is great. But until you bring them up and you can start pushing them as a legitimate tag team, because they have the capabilities, those guys can
yeah,
work.
you
I
go.
I I love watching those two wrestle. They're a great tag team. But until you can actually get them to stop being the goons that get their asses kicked every week, you need somebody to bring a little bit of legitimacy who can go in there and kick somebody's ass. I know the Dragunov's not the biggest person or the strongest person, but he might be the toughest person.
Right.
But it was just a thought, and somebody had meant, there was been rumors of that, and I wanted to get your 2 cents on that.
All right. So WWE and UFC, it seems like they have officially announced at least the name of what they will be called on the stock market, which is TKO Group Holdings. When I saw the name, I'm like, this sounds very much like a Wall Street name. In fact, IRS, aka Michael Wall Street, would probably approve 100% of this name, but it feels super lame to me. TKO's Group Holdings. I understand TKO, but like the group holdings to me, like I mean, how lame can you get?
Pretty lame. That's like I don't even have words for it. I didn't even know that's what it was. That's terrible.
There had been rumors like TKO being part of the name. I'm like, that completely makes sense with the two companies, uh, the two big companies they're fusing together. Okay, technical knockout. Okay, I get that. TKO group holding.
I hate to admit this. Did you know that I was probably about 18 or 19 when I realized that the T in TKO did not stand I didn't know that it stood for technical knockout. I thought it was no what?
TKO from Tokyo, like Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Yes. Did you know I thought that the TKO stood for third when I was a kid because the first two would be, regular knockouts and then the third one would be the TKO. And I'm like, "Oh, I
Right.
guess it's the TKO because it's the third knockout." Because you need three to get the
It,
technical.
it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
I was about 18, 19 when I realized that's not what it was. It's that darn Bristol Eastern education, I tell you.
All right. So we got that. This is like one of those little odd tidbits that I enjoyed. I really like the show on USA Psych. And
Yes.
James Rode Rodriguez has long been a professional wrestling fan. He showed up at many WWE events over the years, but he and a couple of buddies uh, decided that they were going to write a very, very gritty, unvarnished version of the professional wrestling industry, and they're actually having a play that they're putting on starting. I think it's next week, and it's gonna carry on for a couple weeks. Uh, but I appreciate that somebody who has gotten some acclaim, loves the professional wrestling industry, and decided to write something about it and put their money where their mouth is. So James Rode Rodriguez of Psych fame has a show. I forget what the heck the name of it is, but it's running from May 25th to June 11th. And they
Very
say
cool.
a show that's gritty and no holds barred view, not no holds barred with Rip. Wait, what was Rip'em? Uh,
Uh, uh, something
Rip,
like that.
he ended up going against Axe from Demolition at the beginning of the movie, aka Jake Bullet, and then Zeus, aka Debo, later on,
Debo!
and
Debo!
Harriet Hansen.
The GOAT, Stan Hansen.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but so I think it's just cool that somebody who's a fan decided to actually write about the industry and kind of go into it. Uh,
Yeah.
Probably even borrowing a little bit from Dark Side of the Ring and like, hey, we really love this, but let's show all of it.
Right. It's good shit.
Yeah.
Oh, so I got the other question for you.
All right.
So we had mentioned Sergeant Slaughter earlier in the podcast, and it made me think of this.
Yes.
And it was actually mentioned on Cornet, and I wanted to ask you because you've been a fan a little bit longer, and you definitely have a better memory of the 80s. And now this is a little before your time. I apologize. But what
Okay.
can you tell me about Corporal Kirshner?
Corporal Kirchner, when Sergeant Slaughter, so if memory serves me correctly, Sergeant Slaughter decided that he wanted to have a deal with Hasbro because Hasbro brought him onto G.I. Joe as a character. And I remember as a child badly wanting the Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe action figure. It was hard to get. You actually had to buy a bunch of G.I. Joe guys, cut out the thing on the back of the package that you got. You had to send out and you had to send money to get Sergeant Slaughter. I got Sergeant Slaughter. So I think in the end it ended up being a good deal for Sergeant Slaughter because he got money from that merchandising that he wouldn't have gotten being a contracted WWF performer. In the meantime, when Sergeant Slaughter was gone, Vince McMahon decided that he wanted to bring in another American hero who is kind of a blue-collar man who was of military ilk. And, they specifically, in NWA, there was Colonel De Beers. So you sit there and you have the high-ranking officer, and he was a heel. And people didn't like him because, hey, I'm above everybody. I'm better than everybody. I'm a colonel. Even, I know this was just a title to make him like Elvis's manager, but Colonel Rob Parker. I think even they called Jimmy Hart the Colonel at one point. And that was just to display, hey, I'm better than you, I'm over you. Sergeant Slaughter was supposed to be, I'm a drill instructor. I'm supposed to mold these pieces of clay. I'm a blue collar man. I am not an officer. I am supposed to take these people and mold them into fighting machines. When that fighting machine decided, I want to make money because you won't allow me to be on G.I. Joe, Vince McMahon said, I'm going to make a new Sergeant Slaughter. And his name's going to be Corporal Kirshner. And instead of him being a Marine, we're going to have him come from the Army. And he's going to be a corporal. And he came out to the U.S. Army theme, caissons, when the caissons go marching in. And I was like, going, oh, cool, Corporal Kirshner when I was a kid. It turns out behind the scenes he was really difficult to work with. Sounds like he was kind of a dick. And his run in WWF did not last very long because of that. And at some point within like a year or two after, I think the end of his run, we saw the return of Sergeant Slaughter.
Yep.
But Corporal Kirshner, I do remember him. I remember seeing him growing up, and I was like, oh, yeah, he's cool. And they tried to build him up, but, just never really took off. And like I said, they brought Sergeant Slaughter back because I think his G.I. Joe thing had ended, or Vince had come to some sort of agreement that would allow Slaughter to keep on doing the stuff with G.I. Joe, because Vince probably saw like, oh, wait, the kids like G.I. Joe, the kids like Sergeant Slaughter because of G.I. Joe. Not quite the same as the Thunderlips effect with Hulk Hogan, but kind of similar. With Rocky, you had a bit of an older audience, comparatively speaking to kids watching G.I. Joe, but if you're trying to build the fan base of tomorrow, you got to do it with cartoons.
Right.
So, but yes, Corporal Kirshner was a thing, but apparently he was kind of a douche and difficult to deal with.
I had to ask because Cornette was talking about it and said the same thing. And they said it was one of the worst character decisions because it fell flat and he was kind of a dick to work with. I actually have a funny story. So I know that last week I said I had a bunch of questions for you, but from the time I went to go find my piece of paper to write them down, I had forgotten. So luckily, I was thinking of these things when I was writing it down. So when I was trying to come up with Corporal Kirshner, I went to Google because I wanted to make sure I got the pronunciation and the right name and make sure he was corporal, not colonel, and all that stuff. So when I did it, I did not put Corporal Kirshner because I didn't realize it was corporal. I put colonel. And when I got to it, the first one that I thought of was Colonel Kruger. So I Googled it and I typed it in and I went, holy shit, that's Rocco Rock from Public Enemy. So I'm looking at the thing and I was like, yeah, I remember it. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, so you're telling me that the same guy who was, Colonel DeClerc, that's what it was, Colonel DeClerc, that's who I put. The guy who was Colonel DeClerc was the same guy who was Corporal Kirshner? And I must have went through his Wikipedia page about 3 times because it took me only 12 seconds to read the whole thing anyway. And I had actually, in my brainless knowledge, had convinced myself that the guy who was Colonel DeClerc was also Corporal Kirshner. Until I realized that I was completely brainless.
Oh.
It always comes back to Class 13.
Yes.
Jay, I promise you, I really wish I could have sent a picture of my face when I was starting to come to the realization that I thought it was the same guy. Man, the guy who got fired from WWE after 6 months, he was actually there before and he was Corporal Kirshner?
Mm.
He was Colonel DeClerc in WWE? I didn't realize that.
Mm.
I can't believe they got Rocco Rock or Johnny Grunge or whatever the hell it was that was the member of Public Enemy to go in there and replace Sergeant Slaughter. I don't think I ever would have thought of that. Did they not watch Class 13? Was Class 13 like what happens when somebody goes to WWE and they fail? They end up as Colonel DeClerc in a tag team with Sergeant Kruger or whatever the hell the guy's name was, and they beat the Botswana Beast and Kalua before getting fed to the Steiners.
Chris Brown said, "Pretty Deadly goes over Brawling Brutes with fuckery," and I quote.
I'll tell you right now, they might be a little eccentric as a tag team, but man, are they fun to watch in the ring. I actually am happy that Pretty Deadly's on the main roster. They're going to have if they book them properly, and I can't believe I keep saying the almost 7 fucking years of doing this podcast, if they book them properly, Pretty Deadly could be a very, very tough tag team to have in that division.
Yeah. All right, so one last thing on my notebook, and to me it was like the second or third biggest story of the week. And I'm surprised that it's like 2 hours in that we're getting to this.
Wow.
One ace, Cowboy Bob Orton, did an interview where he said his son, Randall Keith Orton, has been advised against returning to the professional wrestling ring. Your thoughts, Brainless One?
Let me just clear my throat a little bit.
Let me clear my throat.
I'm going to sing the entrance of one of my personal favorite wrestlers and one of my personal favorite entrance songs for him. Ah, you're only smoke and mirrors. Let me tell you something right now. Bob Orton knows one thing, and that's to be a heel. He might dance with his granddaughter too when she's doing little dance things. But
by the way, his arm is still broken.
He's still wearing that cast from 1985.
And it smells like Malort.
I think in my heart of hearts, I really hope that this is like just the smoke and mirrors thing, and that he's just doing that just to kind of get people off the scent of his son possibly returning. If this really is the end that we've seen of Randy Orton, between him and then Cena comes out and says that I can't physically do what I could do in the ring anymore, so Cena's basically done. Roman Reigns is going to probably end up following suit. Brock Lesnar is in the twilight of his career. He's about to call it a career at some point too. We're getting to the point where the guys who were running around during the Ruthless Aggression era are just Edge is retiring, or if there's a possibility in the next year we're going to lose Edge, Orton, John Cena, and Brock Lesnar to retirement. We lost Batista. Triple H came out last year at WrestleMania and left his boots in the ring, and he retired. Granted, that was an entirely different, extenuating circumstances for Triple H, but
I'm surprised that Triple H didn't use the idea of like he could plug like a pacemaker back in mid-match. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah. He could have had Ric Flair in his corner for that.
All that being said about Randy Orton, I remember Shawn Michaels was out for 4+ years after a severe back injury after the match against Undertaker, the casket match where like he got back body drop his back on that casket. Ended up working through having that WrestleMania 14 match against Stone Cold Steve Austin where he did the honors, and then we didn't see him in a WWE ring for like 4+ years. I think it was 2 matches in his own promotion in Texas. But we didn't see him. I remember him, though, coming back after that match. He did return to go against Triple H. I think it was at SummerSlam 2002.
Survivor Series, I think.
Yeah, and I think his second match ended up being Elimination Chamber where he won the championship.
Yep.
But he did a promo in the ring where he said, and I believe it's actually been confirmed, the doctors told him not to go back in the ring. And he said more or less, more or less, paraphrasing, I'm not the type of guy to listen to doctors, and I'm just going to keep on wrestling. My belief of Randy Orton is that is what we're going to see. I don't think we're going to see him on a weekly basis anymore, but I do think he believes his back is good enough to do similar to what Edge has been doing.
Yep.
He could show up every few months. He could still be a presence on TV without getting physical.
Yep. If you want him to work like
20 RKOs every episode that he's on, do 1 RKO during WrestleMania. Make it the most spectacular looking RKO it can be. So the fans are like, holy shit, did you just see that thing? I don't think he's done.
I don't either. In my heart of hearts, I don't think he is, but we'll see. Well, I mean, the only other thing I have on my list is my top 10, but I need a hell of a segue. Just do me a favor. Mention the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite.
So one thing I read on one of the websites I go to is that the Blackpool Combat Club is actually better off without one William Regal, which I think is strange, and the fact that the Elite, exists.
Well, Jay, it's funny that you mentioned both the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite, because I'm telling you, this whole storyline that they've had going on, which is going to culminate them with Anarchy in the Arena, which is going to fall flat because we're not going to have a bloody Eddie Kingston coming out with a Yankees t-shirt and a can of gasoline to set Chris Jericho on fire. So I don't know how I feel about Anarchy in the Arena with these guys, but I will say this. I am tired of the Elite, obviously. I've been tired of the Elite for 7 years. And honestly, Plumber Mox and the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club lost its luster after William Regal went back to WWE, to the point where I'm so tired of it. Yeah. To the point where I'm so tired of it I actually came up with a list of the top 10 storylines that are better than the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club.
All right.
Number 10, the Maximum Male Models.
That's shocking.
Number 9, Katie Vick.
If Katie Vick's number 9, I mean, you're reaching for the stars with number 1 here.
Oh, wait till you hear my number 1. I didn't even joke about number 1. I was actually one that kind of tugged at my heartstrings. Number 8, Crash Holly weighing 400 pounds.
Not even a legend.
Weighing at 400 pounds. Number 7. Remember a few years back when everybody was hitting AJ Styles with low blows?
Yes.
That was better than the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club. And I hated that. Number 6, anything with Jeff Jarrett.
Except for right now.
Oh, yeah, of course. Anything, right now, yeah. All right, number 5, the fact that Hacksaw Jim Duggan is an intelligent man.
Ho!
He's an intelligent man.
Intelligent enough to get a gun and get a robber out of his damn house.
But not enough to not look like the janitor at a independent wrestling show in Westbrook, Mass. Webster, Mass. Number 4, Curtis Axel is still alive in the 2015 Royal Rumble.
That's a great storyline.
Number 3, Jim Cornette versus Vince Russo. Number 2, this one hits a little close to home for us. Number 2, F. Mark's Hall of Famer, the Black Scorpion.
So, randomly, I was at work, and I forgot exactly how it came up. But one of my coworkers, actually, I should say one of my team members, pardon the expression, stumbled upon the Shockmaster. And I think it was more because they were a Star Wars fan, but heard about the wrestler who came out in a bejeweled stormtrooper mask. and we ended up gathering around the computer and watching the Shockmaster debut, and they're watching it. I'm like, oh, by the way, he's from Norfolk, and where I was in Norfolk.
Fred Ottman.
It was one of the greatest things, I just have to say.
Yes, it is. And the number 1 storyline that was better than the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club. Back in the early 90s, the Big Boss Man versus the Mountie.
SummerSlam.
You can't do this to me! Hey, you can't do that to me!
And then they had the dude come up from behind him and put his hand on over his...
Oh, man. That was my favorite part about, I think it was SummerSlam 91, if I'm not mistaken.
You might be right.
It was either...
It might have... Yeah, because it was not in Wembley Stadium. That was not 90.
I think it was 90. It was either 90 or 91. And it was...
New York. I think it was Madison Square Garden. I think it was the same one where Mr. Perfect lost the title to Bret Hart.
It was 91 because that was the match made in heaven between Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth for their wedding. And then the match made from hell where the Ultimate Warrior got fired as he ran through the tunnel.
Right.
But, yeah, that is my top 10. I have a very strong place in my heart for that match. I loved Boss Man and the Mountie because I actually thought the Boss Man was going to lose, and that whole thing with him and the going to the jail cell was just top one of my top 5 favorite things I've ever seen in wrestling was that whole thing between the two of them.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to touch base on?
Uh, I don't have anything else that I think are like ginormous.
Yeah.
I mean, AEW All Access, part of the deal that they've signed is now with Warner Brothers Discovery is All Access is going to be available on HBO Max. The fact that some of the pay-per-views coming up aren't being shown on Bleacher Report certainly leads me to believe that maybe we might be seeing AEW pay-per-views coming to HBO Max at some point.
I'd be okay with that. If they were like a subscription thing like the Peacock does with WWE, I'd be on board with that.
Yeah.
As long as I don't have to pay like $50, because I know they have Double or Nothing next week, but I'm not dropping $50 to watch that.
Right. So, for HBO Max, it's like $15 a month. So, clearly AEW doesn't do a monthly pay-per-view thing.
Right.
But, HBO Max has enough other things. I think that probably would make it worthwhile.
Shouldn't they drop
an added like bonus?
But like if you have the HBO Max subscription and then it's like, hey, for an extra $20, like once every 4 months, or once 4 times a year, I should say, if it's like $20 extra just to get the pay-per-view, I'd do that. But I just can't see myself spending $50 on a pay-per-view. And it's nothing personal because you're going in with your fatal 4-way for the World Heavyweight Championship is between MJF, Darby Allin, Mr. Personality, Jungle Boy, and the world's biggest piece of shit, Sammy Guevara. I just want to see. I wouldn't mind seeing Darby win. I don't think he's going to because I think MJF is not dropping the title until near his contract expiring or until Punk returns or whatever. But I know
Darby
that they
is training to
scale Mount Everest.
To not only scale Mount Everest, but I think he wants to jump his car over Mount Everest, over his house, to Space Mountain, never to be returned.
Holding these balloons.
So even beyond that, Darby Allin, part of like doing skateboarding and this, that, and the other thing, coming to our area in the next couple of weeks is the Jackalope Festival, and there's a dude who actually skateboarded across the country from the West Coast to the East Coast. He just arrived in Virginia like today.
Wow.
And it's like, I bet Darby Allin couldn't do that.
I bet you he could. It's Darby Allin.
Right.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to mention, I don't know if I'm going to get to it, but I'm just going to ask you. WWE is right in our backyard this Sunday. Are you going, Brainless One?
I would love to, but finances is not in my strong point right now. So I
want to go, but sleep is a big thing on my plate this week, and going to that show would definitely lead to probably difficulties through the next 5 days work-wise, where I'm like, But Seth Franklin Rollins is supposed to be there. Whether or not he's wearing a laced romper, I don't know. But Bianca Belair is going to be there. I know that that's your daughter's favorite, but yeah. I'd really like to get there. I really would, but I'm like, shite. Like,
honestly, if they did it tomorrow, because the financial thing is one thing, but like I agree with you. Like 7:30 on a Sunday for a house show.
Yeah.
And it's like it's going to be over at like, I don't know,
10.
9:30, 10 o'clock.
by the time you get out of that parking lot,
It's gonna be like 11. Man, I sound old.
yeah,
What the hell's wrong with me?
you
Ugh.
think that you got to a certain age or something, and you're like, I got other things to do.
Just remember, I'm the guy who didn't want to go to SmackDown in Uncasville because it was a Tuesday night and I had to work the next day at 6 o'clock.
Sad.
Yeah. Still
Anyway,
went though.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bianca got misted by Asuka again. That match is going to be at Night of
Oh
Champions,
God, that
where we get Belair versus Asuka for the, I think officially now the SmackDown's Women's
is over.
Championship, even though
They
she's
haven't
on.
they haven't done the switcheroo yet.
Makes perfect nonsense.
It's WWE. Just tell me that she didn't oversell it like Shawn Michaels in SummerSlam 2005 like she did last week, because that was just overselling the shit out of that. Like I was like, no, that's just bad.
Yeah.
It's just Asuka. I mean, I could understand if it was Muda, but Asuka. I mean, again, nothing against Asuka, but it's Muda.
Yeah.
Muda put out the flame in that incredible match that he had with him and Flair versus the Thunderdome.
Havoc, 1989, him and Terry Funk against Ric Flair, and this is
Sting!
Pew! 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 Only a partial spray to Bianca's face.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
It was still bad last
All right.
week.
I think that's about it. I think it's time, perhaps for a good, bad, and brainless.
All righty. So, Cousin Jay, what do you got for your good this week?
I think just the professional wrestling industry, the fact that AEW signed as lucrative of a deal as they did. If professional wrestling was on the downhill that so many podcasters tried to portray it as, why would this happen? The answer is it's not on the downhill that they talk about.
Yep.
I've talked about this for years on this show. People view professional wrestling in a different way than they used to.
Yep.
The ratings are not going to be what they were during the Attitude Era. They're not. But guess what? People watch it on YouTube, right?
Yep.
They watch it on Twitter.
Yep.
If they were doing so poorly, their attendance would be down. It's not.
They want to be.
But guess what? They sell out.
Yep.
People show up. They put their money down to be there live.
Yep.
They put their money down to buy the shirts. They put their money down to invest in Peacock.
They do.
You could tell me all about the damn ratings being down. Wrestling on a global level is not down. People show up. They don't announce matches for WrestleMania and they sell out both nights. They don't announce a match for AEW in Wembley Stadium and they sell 50 or 60,000 tickets. Tell me how the wrestling industry is actually down.
WWE just secured a massive deal with UFC. WWE is spotlighted on ESPN all the time. Ric Flair got his own documentary on ESPN. They just brought in future WWE Hall of Famer Pat McAfee.
Wrestling is not in bad shape.
Nope.
Wrestling is different than what it used to be. And we have two extremely viable companies in the United States, and we have several other second, third, and fourth tier companies where people could actually earn a living.
Yes.
Right? You could choose the flavor you want. If you like hardcore stuff, there's something out there for you.
John
If you
Moxley.
prefer more athletic out there, you have something for you. If you prefer more sports entertainment stuff, there's something out there for you. If you prefer Japanese strong style, there's something for you. If you prefer lucha libre, there's something for you. In fact, Nick Khan wants to create a lucha libre show and actually wants professional wrestling on 7 days a week. And as much as I have touted him several times in the last several weeks about how genius the dude is for having these ginormous events in outside countries that are starved for WWE, this is a dumb idea. Having wrestling 7 days a week for WWE, in my view. All that being said, the professional wrestling industry, in my view, is on an upswing. The fact that they're getting all this money proves they're on an upswing continuing. And
They
good on them and good for the wrestlers in the industry.
And honestly, look at what they did with Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny's, like I said, the biggest musical star in the world, and he just basically sold out Backlash in Puerto Rico.
And called it the greatest moment of his life.
Yep. And I'll tell you right now, if I had a dollar every time Dave Meltzer argued with somebody over ratings, because they keep talking about how the ratings were back in the Attitude Era, I could probably go buy AEW.
Right.
But my good for this week goes to Dustin Rhodes or Runnels or whatever you want to call him, Goldust. 15 years sober is an incredible accomplishment, and it should not be overlooked. So I'm giving one of my personal favorites, Goldust, Dustin Runnels, my good for this week.
All right.
What do you got for your bad?
You know, I don't think it was a work where a Cowboy Bob Orton said Randy's been advised not to wrestle ever again. I'm putting this in my bad, even though I believe we are going to see Randall Keith Orton in the ring again. I don't think it's based off of what Cowboy Bob is saying. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I think he's going to want to heal up as much as he can before he has a final run, because I believe Randy believes that he still has some time that he could do where he's not going to do some permanent damage that's going to affect his quality of life with his family going forward. Again, similar to Edge, where Edge thought he was done, and they ended up having a surgery where like they were able to fix Edge enough where he could go into the ring and not mess with his long-term future.
Right.
And I think Randy is one of those dudes who, like, he'll listen to the doctor to an extent, but he's like, I feel fine enough. I could go. I've been more hurt than this.
Right.
And performed in the ring. We haven't seen the last of Randy, but it's sad hearing that, like, clearly we're near the end of the road.
Right. Agreed.
And it's that we might not get the Cody versus Randy feud that I think many people would love to see.
Agreed. My bad for this week, I'm going with Roman Reigns is fighting for the tag team championships. Yes, I understand storyline-wise. This makes a lot of sense. But he is your biggest star, your biggest attraction, your biggest champion. And you're not having him defend his championships in this show that you're getting a bunch of money from. Instead, he's fighting for the tag team championships. If you're going to have him sit there and like actually, break all these records as champion, you got to defend the title. He should, if he's going to be at the
as U.S. champion, where he held the championship longer than anybody else, but like defended it like twice.
Right. And it's like
Sorry, Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose.
Right. But like if you really want to do it, he should be defending his championship. You're kind of like lowering him by having him be in the tag team championship match.
Brother.
Again, I understand that it's, storyline wise and the Usos and all this stuff is going to make sense in the end. But I really do think that is your WWE Undisputed Universal Champion. If he's going to be on the pay-per-view, he should be defending his championships.
Right.
What do you got for your brainless?
Ric Flair and Vince McMahon have a special place in the brainless universe. But this person right here, like, you go from Vince to Flair. This person, I think, is the next in line as far as I'm not going to retire him anytime soon because he's not in the news quite as much. Marty Jannetty. You are earning your Lifetime Achievement Award in our brainless category for me. You have possibly admitted to murdering somebody. You possibly slept with your stepdaughter. You clearly have some either mental health and or drug issues you're still dealing with, and you want to teach the stars of tomorrow. What are you going to teach them?
How to throw themselves into a pane glass window. Jay, we've gone through this. I mean, Bobby Heenan, if he was still alive, would tell you the same thing.
He meant to do that. Jannetty was running away, and Shawn Michaels just helped him through the window.
I'm going to watch that at some point before I go to bed tonight. Just because it was just so iconic. But I agree with you that he really shouldn't be. What are they going to learn from Marty Jannetty?
I mean, he was pretty good in the ring, but at this point he has jacked up ankles, jacked up mind, coked up mind, drugged up mind, murderer, kind of incest, but not really, but kind of. Great example. I mean, Shawn Michaels turned his life around. We have not quite seen that from Jannetty.
Marty Jannetty has more baggage than when Akeem walked out of the airport during Coming to America. I love using that analogy.
When you think of garbage, think of Akeem.
Speaking of garbage, my brainless for this week, and now mind you, that my whole thing with Corporal Kirchner and Colonel DeClerc almost led me to getting my brainless, but luckily I thought of what it was supposed to be that overtook me getting my brainless this week.
Okay.
And that is the fact that on Wednesday on Dynamite, this I can't believe it wasn't even mentioned, but Karen Jarrett is all elite.
I thought you were going to say Duke Drosy.
No, that was last week, and
sad.
No. Why? Why is she there, Jay? Why? She doesn't bring anything to the equation. It's bad enough that Jeff Jarrett's in there and he's wrestling matches and he's getting title shots in his 50s. Why is Karen Jarrett there?
When she was in Impact, she was very good at being a Karen. In fact, I'm wondering if the naming of the Karen came from her.
It was either that or my Aunt Karen.
Could have been.
Just kidding. Jay, when she came out and she was standing there behind FTR when they were distracted by Jarrett and the rest of their motley crew, and I'm standing and I'm looking at her and I'm like, I swear to God, that better not be in. And I couldn't even get the sentence. And there's Karen Jarrett. I'm like, oh God, no, no, God, please, no. No. I did not need to see Karen Jarrett in All Elite Wrestling. So, it gets my brainless for this week.
Okay.
So, if you like what you see, whether you're a first-time fan or a continuous fan, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube at the letter T, the letter H, the letter E, the letter F, the letter N, MARKS, the F and Marks. If you like and follow and subscribe to us, we will do the same back. That has always been our
mantra. And make sure that you set up notifications so that when we go live on Facebook, you will be notified that we are live. And also make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify. That way, if you're not able to tune in on a weekly basis, you will actually be able to take us on the road with you, and you will be able to watch and or listen to the podcast from your home, from your office, from your car, anywhere you want. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Such good shit, pal.
Yeah.
I think that's everything then. I think we've covered everything. We've touched base. I think that's
no about nothing else.
Wait. There is one more thing that we need to do.
What's that, brainless one?
Well, Cousin Jay, I did mention him earlier, and I really feel like I should have given him the number one spot, but it's fine. He'll forgive me when I put him in the After Marks Hall of Fame again this year. But did you know, Cousin Jay, that today, May 19th of 2023, at an astonishing 3,036 days, this gentleman right here, F.M. Marks Hall of Fame, is still alive in the 2015 Royal Rumble.
Bow, 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 bow. Yeah.
Now, yeah. So, for episode 313 of everyone's favorite wrestling podcast, the F and Marks,
I'm Jay, and he is.
I am clearly the brainless one. Make sure you mark out
with your guac out. See you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in.
SmackDown, and we will talk to you next week before Night of Champions. And even though we will not be watching Night of Champions, we will give our preview to the show.
And the double or nothing predictions too, because I almost forgot that that's next week too.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah! All right.
Later, everyone.
Bobby.
Later, Cousin Jay. Yeah?
Yeah!